In a 1999 Rolling Stone article reviewing David Bowie's album Hours, Greg Tate was quoted as saying, "As was the case with Miles Davis and jazz, Bowie has come not just to represent his innovations, but to symbolize modern rock as an idiom in which literacy, fashion, style, sexual exploration, and social commentary can be rolled into one." As a child, my father was always very into music, and as he was born in the same generation as David Bowie, the soundtrack of his stories of his own life was always the music of David Bowie. So it was the soundtrack to my childhood as well. David Bowie was born on January 8th of 1948, the same day as Elvis Presley, which, if you think about it, is kind of significant that we have two main cultural musicians born on the same day, same year, two different countries, England and the US. While he was young, David Bowie was very interested in jazz music, and he learned to play the saxophone by age 13. And he traveled and played with several different neighborhood bands before finally staking out on his own and creating his own music in the late 1960s. A lot of people don't know this, but his real name is David Jones, and he changed his name to avoid confusion with Davy Jones of the Monkees. So it was almost necessary, but he liked the Bowie knives, so he changed his name to David Bowie. So I always thought that was really interesting. As he got older, he was always a bit scandalous, starting the Society for Men with Long Hair, I think it's called, in the late 1960s. But his first big hit was with Space Oddity in 1969, and that's Ground Control to Major Tom. And then following that with the release of The Man Who Sold the World in 1970. Once he became known for those pieces of those albums, it was only a matter of time before he broke onto the main stage to become an international superstar. In 1972, he created the persona of Ziggy Stardust, and he put out the album Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. And that launched him into international fame at such a rate that there was such a wide demand of it that by 1973, just 1 year later, he finished a show one night, and without telling his band members or anyone ahead of time, he announced that that would be their final show. Just like that, it was done. 1 year as Ziggy Stardust. But he had a lot more to contribute to both music and culture from there. Ziggy was by far not the end of the road for David Bowie. Within his personal life, he had a lot of different scandals that came about besides just having long hair. While he married early to Angela Bowie, he was openly bisexual at a time when that was definitely not at all accepted, nonetheless widely accepted. And he had a tendency not only to have his long hair, but to wear women's clothing as well. So all around, quite a scandalous figure at a time when were not many. You know, in the U.S. at that time, we were having problem with Elvis shaking his hips too much. Nonetheless, seeing other men. He also, from the beginning of his career, had a great interest in film and starred in several avant-garde films such as The Man Who Fell to Earth and The Hunger. And much later in the 1980s, most people are familiar with his work in Labyrinth, which is what a lot of our generation recognizes him for now. His cultural influence is one of the biggest parts of his career, though. Not only was he an amazing musician and artist, but his continuing style and recreation of himself as a persona influenced many of the musicians and artists and movie directors and pretty much every fashion designers today. He brought elements of kabuki theater and from Japan with mime from France, combined everything to raise and elevate the level of performance that we had in musicianship. That even today it's hard to match. There are few artists that actually put the time and effort into not only creating new personas and putting the work out there, but also who can pull it off successfully without seeming a bit like a schmuck. um, to wrap it up, you know, we can see that it's been David Bowie has been a major influence not only in my life, but in my current generation and the ones preceding. But he is still a continuing influence now. He just recently, in 2013, released his 30th studio album, not counting remixes, not counting singles, not counting duets. 30th studio album to great acclaim last year. And we're still waiting to hear about a tour. But I will finish up with a quote from the man himself. I don't know where I'm going from here, but I promise it won't be boring.
Very good.